Hello and welcome to Sounding Out the Word podcast, a ministry of Anchor Baptist Church in Salt Lake City, Utah, where we desire to reach the world with the gospel and disciple those whom God allows us to reach. It's wonderful to be with you again today, and I pray that this podcast will be a blessing to you. Over the last several weeks, we've been looking at the life of Joseph, and we're going to do something a little bit different today, and I pray it'll be a blessing to you. And we have a special guest on the podcast today, so we're going to break from our series through Joseph, and I've got on the phone with me Pastor Paul Hoover. He pastors Souls Harbor Baptist Church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us today, and how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the program today.
We're looking forward to just talking through some things, discussing things, all things church related, and special days and different things coming up in our services. And I don't know, sometimes it's interesting. I feel like almost on a podcast, you feel like you're sort of listening into someone else's conversation. So maybe that'll be a blessing for some today. And I think those that are involved in church work and maybe pastors or assistant pastors, youth pastors, and just faithful church members might find these things a blessing. Why don't you tell the listeners just a moment, about yourself a little bit, how long you've been pastoring there, and what's taking place now this time of year?
Okay. I've been pastoring here at Souls Harbor Baptist Church in Milwaukee for 7 years almost. And we came here with my wife and I, Michelle. She's from Pennsylvania. We got married in 2011, but we came here in 2014 from Texas. And we had no children at that time. And so we started our work here as a co-pastor with my dad. And by the end of 2014, we had our first son. His name is Silas. He's 6 years old now, and then we've added another daughter and a son to our group of children. So we've got 3 kids now. And we've just kind of, I guess you could say, gotten into the routine of things as a family and pastoring the church here. It's amazing how busy you aren't when you don't have kids, and then somehow you can still make it all happen with children. But we've just gotten into kind of like, I guess you could say, a routine. But every year we have a. I guess you want me to talk about a little bit about our church and our theme and stuff. But
yeah, I wanted to ask you too. To ask you too, with your wife being from Pennsylvania, did she wear shoes normally, or did she have to get used to that?
Well,
for our listeners,
a really interesting state because my wife's from not from the city. She's definitely from the country, and I guess they're kind of like hillbillies. But yeah, she does wear shoes.
For our listeners who don't know, Paul is my brother-in-law, and we love him and love Michelle and the kids there. So I always have to give her a hard time there. But we just had Time Change Sunday. Let me ask you about that, because it's always interesting. We always advertise it. We always talk about it and talk it up, especially the spring forward. Tell us what you do, and also maybe then follow up with this question here. Do you think it matters? Do we need to do it? Are people always faithful, or always there? Is it just kind of something that's in a habit of announcing, and we really don't need to?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about this last year, last week, I guess, but for this last year's time change. We always, I thought about it, like growing up in church, it was always highly announced, and maybe that just was my dad, how he did things. But honestly, we do announce it, we put it on the calendar. But with the fact that we don't really set our clocks as much anymore, we depend on our phones mostly. I think that's a big help to most people. But it is important, I think, to use any opportunity to emphasize or to promote a church service. So, yeah, we do talk about time change, but I don't do it in such a way that we I guess I just assume, being assumptive with announcements, we're assuming that people are going to be here. Right. We're not going to say, well, if you feel up to it, come to church. I understand Sunday school might be a little bit early. No, we're just assumptive, because this is where I believe God's people should be on Sunday.
Sure.
And they need to kind of get that philosophy as well. People are willing to do a lot of things as long as they're taught. and and expected to do those things. So,
I like that idea, and I never thought about it that way, that you said that it's an opportunity to promote church in the Lord's house. And that's kind of what I've talked to our teachers about in our workers meeting that we have every week, that little things like that, whether it's time change or any special, if you want to call it that, event or difference in the calendar, is an opportunity to reach out to people once again and say, hey, this is going on. Hey, this is taking place, and emphasize the importance of God's house. So that's a really good thought on that matter. And people are generally in our churches, they love the Lord. They love what's going on. They want to be a part of it, and they're faithful. I remember years ago, and you might remember this as well, we had a lady in our church that suggested, instead of changing the clocks on Saturday night, she suggested go ahead and changing them after church on Sunday. That way we wouldn't have to mess with it. And I said, well,
really?
I guess we could do that, but it might throw you off for Monday morning. But
I've thought about doing that, and I remember what you're talking about too. But actually, when I was at Marion Avenue Baptist Church, at least the year I was there was '04, for their spring time change, they did do that. And I think they did that every year.
Huh.
I don't know if they still do, but when Larry Brown was the pastor, just because they have, I guess their situation's unique. They go out on bus routes, and some of those people go an hour away.
Sure.
And they're concerned about making sure the kids get to church. It's more of a necessity for their bus ministry. And I think it's also just makes it easier on their own church people. So every church kind of has to do their own unique way of looking at that. But I would say for the majority of us, I think just keeping things simple is the best way to go.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm glad that we can figure out what works best for our church and go with that. So,
but simple is usually best.
Yeah. We have Easter Sunday coming up soon here in just a few weeks. And what are you doing for that? Are you doing flyers, gifts, special service change? What's going on?
So because of COVID, we didn't do our regular Super Saturdays, where we go out and canvas. And what I mean by canvas is that we go and we put flyers on doors. We're not actually knocking on doors typically. We'll talk to whoever we can find, but we're trying to get 1,000 doors as fast as we can. And so this year we're doing a Super Saturday, and I have 5,000 cards, and they say, come celebrate with us. And it's for Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. So we're promoting both days. And so, we're going to do 1,000 cards a Saturday, but we have 4,000 more. And we've been working on this for a few weeks now and going out throughout the week and just trying to reach people.
Now, are you doing a sunrise? Are you doing a sunrise service?
We do not have that scheduled this year. We've typically done that, but I'm trying to find our calendar if I can find that. But we have a April 4th service, 10:45, and we have breakfast this year at 9:00. But I love the sunrise service. It's usually a very very beautiful time here because we're on the the western shore of Lake Michigan. So we go out to the lake and we can actually see the sunrise up over the lake, which is really cool. But it is very early, and it depends on the time of year. Whenever Easter falls, sometimes we're out there at like 6:00. 5:45. It's pretty early. But
if you have a real deal sunrise service, it is early, depending on, like you said, when Easter falls. This year it seems like it's kind of in the middle. It can be sooner and it can be later. So it's kind of right in the middle there for that. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about as far as church goes, your yearly calendar. It feels like it's still the beginning of the year, but actually we're in the last month of this first quarter, so it's flying by. As far as your church calendar, maybe again it's of interest to those that are listening, because some churches don't. Sadly, some churches don't plan very far in advance. They just kind of shoot from the hip. Some churches are very, very organized, where they have it done maybe even in December the previous year. What does your yearly calendar look like? I know you have one, but how much do you add to it throughout the year? How detailed is it? Tell us some things about that.
We get pretty detailed with things, and the crazy thing is we usually end up reprinting the calendar throughout the year because things do change. Okay. But you do have to have a plan. I think. And I don't like to be reactive. I like to be proactive. And so that's how you get good speakers in. If you want to have a good quality, preacher in, I hate to put it that way, but they usually have to book somebody that's really good a couple years out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that requires planning. And it's really easier this way because we kind of have a template of how we do things. We do change things around a little bit, but kind of like what you guys did at Heritage when we worked with you down there, you guys have a great had one there in January, or Winter Revival, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I think you guys did that from almost the very first year that you were there, probably 2007. You had your first one there.
We did, yeah.
I don't know if you had Bob Smith or who you had there, but yeah, you had a beautiful thing every year that was nice because the church family appreciates that because they can kind of plan their schedule around it too.
Mm-hmm.
That's really why we do a calendar. I don't necessarily emphasize, we're always going to stick to the plan, because I like to have a little bit of flexibility, but we do the calendar just to give people a heads up.
Right.
VBS dates. People will do a lot of things. I've learned, I used to assume people weren't as interested in like taking days off of work for church things, but they will do it because they want to be there. And I think if we, I'm not saying expect them to, but encourage them to plan their vacations around these things, or what I mean by vacation, like taking days off, because we have a lady in our church, she'll take a whole week off of work just for VBS because she loves it so much. And so I try to, we, at the end of the year in December, we finalize our calendar. Either we usually give it out on the very last day of the year or the very first Sunday of the year. Typically, it just depends on how it falls. But again, people understand here that things are subject to change too.
Now, is that during your vision night that you hand that out, or is it before?
Yes, that would be. We don't call it our vision night. It's not a bad name, but we just have our like watch night service, and I just pump things up and get excited. It's basically as a vision night.
Sure.
But yeah, we do hand out a calendar, and we also we withhold the theme until that time too.
Okay.
It's because people then gives them, again, promoting the service. It gives them like, hey, if you come for our watch night service, you'll actually kind of know what's going on for the next year before everyone else or whatever. If you don't come, then I guess you miss out. But they also they're privy to the new theme, and everything goes up on the website that day usually, or right after that service. And
it does definitely
watch a film and. Yeah,
it does definitely help to build excitement, and because I know there'll be people that are negative about this. No, church isn't all about just excitement, but I tell you, I'd rather go to a church that is exciting than one that's not. I don't want to go to a dead church. I don't want to pastor or have a dead church. And I'm reminded, and the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Oh, yeah. And so vision gives people hope. It gives direction. It gives a plan. It gives a purpose. So vision is so important when laying out, like you said, a calendar. Yeah, things are going to change, but you have those big dates on there that people can count on. They know, and most people do well with structure in their lives. Most people don't do so well if they're just haphazard and shoot from the hip. We get up at a certain time, we go to bed at a certain time, we punch a clock, and people do well with routine, and that kind of helps having that, I think, that church calendar for them to do that.
Well, you probably agree with COVID, and at least with us, I did notice, people did not do well when they were out of their regular routine. And that happened with COVID. And so the church, actually, what we try to do here, we actually try to kind of reinstate a little bit more routine for people. We had events going on during the week during COVID where people could come and get involved. Some of them were laid off, and they actually came over to the church, and we repainted the whole sanctuary. It took about a month. We had the teens involved. We had, 16, 17-year-old kids, boys up on the scaffolding 3 levels up, and, painting the windows. And it was that honestly, that would have cost $10,000 to hire a company to come do it. And they were productive, and afterwards they were like, look at what we did.
Yeah.
Lord used us to get this done, and we weren't sitting on our hands. And so routine is important.
Yeah.
But again, excitement is important too. I think, use the word vision. That's a biblical word. God, I think, expects us to have a vision of Jesus Christ, and that's not one of sadness or failure. It's one of victory.
Yeah.
And I think we should be, always looking up and moving forward according to his agenda. But I think the church should be an exciting place. That's why kids don't want to go to church.
Yeah.
Because it's become, just routine, and not saying routine's wrong. Of course, we're emphasizing that, but where it's just it's not a place of progress. It's a place of just it's become stale.
Mm-hmm.
It's become dead. So I think that we need to work towards making it a place of excitement.
Well, we're on the winning side, and
Right.
it's a familiar song, but we probably don't use it and talk about it enough, because we truly are on the winning side. Yeah, there's times of defeat, discouragement, things that take place, and if you want to focus on those, that's going to be your life. But certainly, we're on the winning side. We ought to be looking up. We ought to be expecting that blessed hope and the assurance of our salvation. And yeah, so many people are leaving churches, and churches are dying because they don't give any hope. Even when someone is doing wrong and maybe they're away from the Lord, they still need hope that they can come back to the Lord, that they can walk with God again. And it's so important to give hope to our people.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for taking the phone call, and we'll look forward to doing this again. Who knows, our podcast is probably going to blow up with subscribers, and have to have it a weekly thing with you. But thank you for being a part of it. Thanks for taking the call. And you've been listening to Sounding Out the Word podcast, again, a ministry of Anchor Baptist Church located in Salt Lake City, Utah. And our guest today has been Pastor Paul Hoover of Souls Harbor Baptist Church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'd encourage you, if you are from that area or you're passing through, stop by their church and give them a visit at one of their regular service times. And you can find them on the internet at shbcmilwaukee.com, shbcmilwaukee.com. And certainly you can find us here in the Salt Lake Valley at anchorbaptistslc.org. God bless you. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.